Okay, so last week, if you remember, we talked about Pancake. Oh, thanks, Matt. That's awesome. Talked about Pancake. Let me move this a little bit. And who is our foster dog who's afraid of my husband. And last week we talked about arranging the house and sort of making life a little easier. And this week we're talking about training him around my husband. So I'm going to go over just a little review from last week so that people who only watch this recording um, at least have some background or know to look at another video. And then we'll move on to the new stuff. Okay, so part 2 here is Pancake learns new skills. And to be fair, most of these things are that we're working on with Pancake are behaviors that he already knows. We're just reinforcing them in certain contexts where he didn't previously do them very often. Okay, so for people who haven't been with us the last couple weeks, the problem behavior we're working with is a dog who growls and barks at family members. And we're working on a case study, which is my foster dog Pancake, who does, in fact, growl and bark at my husband. 2 weeks ago, we talked about whether we should punish aggression. And if you remember our framework that we'll use again today for understanding and changing behavior problems, we decided that because dogs who are barking and growling are usually motivated to drive a scary thing away because they find it scary, it's an aversive thing to them, that having punishment involved in this, so say yelling at the dog for barking or growling, isn't likely to change this motivation to make the scary thing go away. And so if you successfully punish growling, for instance, which means the growling would decrease, the dog still wants the scary thing to go away and might try other behaviors like biting, which we like less than growling. So we're not going to punish the aggressive behavior. Instead, we're going to look at other ways to change it. And what we talked about last week were ways to change both the dog's motivation to make the scary thing go away, in this case, my husband, and to decrease opportunities for aggressive behavior to be sort of performed or expressed and be reinforced. And real quickly, to review, the way that we decreased opportunities for aggression to be reinforced was to first look at when it was happening really precisely in detail in my house. So what was my husband doing and where was Pancake? And then looking at this, we said, okay, what can we change most easily? And we decided that changing where Pancake is easier than changing what you're usually easier than changing what your household members are doing in their day-to-day lives. And so we took some of these situations, looked at where Pancake was, and put him somewhere else, essentially. So if you remember, he had a pen in the kitchen, which was a high-traffic area that my husband was in a lot. And we moved his pen to a less trafficked place where people don't walk by very often. Another example, instead of letting him have access from this family room into the kitchen where he would often run out and charge and bark at my husband, we put up a baby gate to keep him at a greater distance that was less likely to sort of prompt him to bark and growl. We also looked at motivation to make my husband go away, and was there some way that we could decrease that motivation? And if you remember, we talked about pairing the scary person or scary thing with good stuff, with positive reinforcement. And we looked at some videos of my husband tossing treats to Pancake. So this week, we're going to look at specifically what behaviors I might want to reinforce to improve Pancake's behavior in the house. Okay, so where does training fit into this framework? Changing behavior. I mean, we are already changing behavior, to be fair, by altering motivation and opportunity in the ways we've already discussed. But with training, we're talking about reinforcing usually an alternative behavior to what the dog's doing that we don't like. So when we train with positive reinforcement, we're lucky enough to be positively impacting the dog's behavior from a couple different angles. We are potentially changing their motivation for the consequence of the scary thing to go away, because now the scary thing predicts good stuff. So for instance, if some random guy just came up to your door and stood there ringing the doorbell, you might think, it would be good if they just went away. I don't know what they want. Seem a little creepy. If someone comes to the door with the pizza you ordered, you're a little less motivated to make them go away, right? You like the pizza guy because he brought you pizza. So same kind of thing with dogs, is that the dog in Pancake, in this case, may be less motivated to drive my husband away if my husband comes bearing gifts. And then the other way that we can decrease motivation for the dog to behave aggressively to get this consequence, to get the scary thing to move away, is by giving the dog other behaviors they can do to get the same consequence, to get distance from the scary thing. So I'll show you that when we talk about what behaviors I've been using with Pancake, what I choose to reinforce. And by the way, I'll get into this a little bit, but I'm not advocating for putting your dog in scary situations deliberately and then so that they feel relieved when they move away. But I do like using positive reinforcement to increase the frequency of behaviors that will help the dog have other strategies to get away if they do feel uncomfortable. Okay, so this is a quick summary why positive reinforcement is really helping us in multiple ways here. We have the opportunity to potentially decrease, in this case, Pancake's motivation to get away from my husband, because there's good stuff involved every time my husband appears. And we may be able to decrease his motivation to use aggressive behavior like barking or growling to make him go away, because I'm going to reinforce other behaviors that I like better that Pancake is already doing or can do that will get him more distance from my husband if he wants it. So 3 of the particular behaviors that I'm reinforcing with Pancake are come to me or recall, go over there, which just means go someplace, move somewhere that isn't toward me, and then kind of stay put or settle. Like wherever you are, just hang out there, it's fine. And I'm going to show you video examples of these, but one thing I really want you to be aware of is that you can and should probably reinforce anything your dog does around a trigger, or, in this case, around, say, the family member who is feared by your dog. Reinforce anything that they do around that person that is okay. So don't hold out for some specific behavior that, I really want him to look at me. Just looking at the person they're a little bit worried about and not barking or growling, that's not doing nothing. They're doing a behavior. They're looking quietly and maybe sitting, standing, whatever. And that's reinforceable. So I would reinforce anything you see that is okay with you. And this is this can be kind of liberating if you're used to being a little more strict with your training. More effective, gives you more opportunities to reinforce something. And what we're going to be looking at now in the video is opportunistic training done in the course of just, day-to-day life in the house. And so it's not quite the same in a lot of ways as, putting a leash on your dog, going out to some location where you're going to work around some trigger at a distance, and you're having a training session and you know what you're working on and things are kind of controlled. In the house, the trigger's there all the time, and opportunities to train or to have trouble can pop up pretty much anytime. So I really like opportunistic training really all the time, but especially when you've got a trigger in the house that lives with the dog. Matt says, is reinforcing anything you like also called shaping? Not necessarily. Shaping means that, say you have some goal behavior in mind, and you're going to reinforce pieces of that along the way to get to the ultimate goal. So for instance, if I were going to shape a dog looking at me, like turning their head and their eyes toward my face, but they couldn't quite do that yet, or couldn't do that in a certain situation, I might first reinforce a slight head turn, then a bigger head turn, then a full head turn, but no, not with eye contact. And if I wanted eye contact, that might be the last thing. So it could be, but not necessarily. So if it's okay for you sort of at the end of the day when you have your final result, if whatever you just reinforced, that's fine. If that is just what happens, then, it may or may not be part of a shaping process ultimately. And it doesn't really matter as long as you are okay with what's happening. Okay, let me see if I can get our video to play. All right, let me pause this for a second. Okay, so we're going to look at those 3 behaviors that I mentioned, which are come to me or recall, move away or go over there, and settle, hang out, stay put, whatever you'd like to call it. And I just want to show you a few examples of different levels of difficulty and totally opportunistic situations that we've used them in at home. So here, Pancake is in the family room with me, and we have that baby gate up that I talked about last week that keeps him from running into the kitchen and barking at my husband. And I let him notice that my husband's there, but before he barks, this is pretty important, before he feels the need to bark, and with the baby gate here, it was much rarer for him to bark, but I want to try to get him to do some behavior I like better. And actually, I could have just reinforced him looking through the baby gate quietly. That would have been fine. But I want him to practice moving away from things that he's not sure about. And I also want him to have a good recall coming to me. That's just a handy behavior to have. So we're kind of doing, the killing 2 birds kind of thing. I hate that saying, actually, but double duty training, let's call it. So he just noticed Barrett in the kitchen, and then I called him. He's like, okay, I will take that piece of cheese. Thank you very much. So that was with the baby gate closed. That was early on. Here's a little bit later, something a little harder. Now the baby gate's open, and he's gone over to peek out to see what my husband is doing in the kitchen. And I say, hey, okay. I let him look for a couple seconds. I say, all right, come on over and get your treat. Move away. And then as he became more and more comfortable with my husband, I would let him go out of the family room and go check out what he was doing in the kitchen, because a lot of times now the kitchen is often one of the first safe places for dogs because that's where food happens. So I let him go out and probably get some food from my husband. But I don't want him to linger out there too long because eventually something might happen that spooks him. So I let him go out, maybe gets a treat, and then I'm going to, again, call him away. Call him back to me. And if you have multiple dogs, they usually all come to get treats. And then this last clip here is is pretty advanced. This is Pancake coming into our bedroom where he has just recently started sleeping. And he comes in the door and he sees my husband. You can just see his feet there, standing up. So husband standing up is traditionally or, historically tough for him and pretty close, just a few feet away. And so he could leave the room if he would like to. I want him to go into his crate for bedtime. And so this is a time where I decide to try it and say, well, he looks pretty relaxed. I'm going to see if he can't come to me past my husband. And so I called him and he was able to come on over to his crate. All right. So those were just truly just in the course of day-to-day life, opportunistic training, where Pancake was noticing my husband at a distance or context that didn't completely freak him out. He wasn't barking or anything. And saying, hey, when you notice that, one thing you can do is come on over to me and get a treat. And so not only does that teach him that he can just move away instead of running toward my husband and barking at him. But that when he sees my husband, there's good stuff available. Come over to me and get a treat. And that can help build that some of that positive association we want. Now, these next few clips, I think, are the kind of go over there or move a little bit away training. And for this, normally what I do, or what I've been doing with Pancake, which is a little bit of lazy training, but I'm personally okay with that, is when he notices my husband in what somewhat close proximity, whatever happens to be close according to Pancake right now, I'll kind of encourage him to turn away and take a few steps away for a treat. So here my husband's standing there at the baby gate. See Pancake, I wait till Pancake notices him. And then I'm like, hey, why don't you go eat a treat just a few steps over that way? So that is hopefully reinforcing him turning and moving away. Here's another situation, same thing, husband at baby gate. Wait till he looks, and then it actually took him a while to figure out the treat was behind him. I should have done a better job at pointing it out to him, but I did eventually get up to get it. This is a particularly tough situation for Pancake. If you were with me last week, I think, you'll remember that this is the same scenario where we saw barking and lunging. So husband has come in from the garage, or is going out, probably come in, I don't know, with a bunch of ski stuff on, big snow gear and things. And Pancake's first instinct, which is not a great one, is to go closer to him. As you can see in the still frame, he's like heading over there. And I'm going to, call his name to get his attention and be tossing treats on the other side of the room. Like, hey, eat a treat over there. That's really not necessary to go check out what he's doing right now. And so I'm just tossing treats away. That's it, right? Nothing fancy there. And I can see your questions and comments. Just put them in whenever you have them. Now, the last behavior that, and this is probably the one I use the most frequently, and that could be because we're frequently sitting around and not moving around. We should probably change that. But here, Pancake's relaxing in front of the fire, and I'm probably sitting there with my laptop. And my husband, I think, is making noise in the kitchen. And this is a good place to start if you're just starting out with training. Don't aim for something difficult like, well, I'm going to wait till my husband or whoever, walks toward this dog and then I'll give him a treat if he doesn't bark. Have something simple like this where literally there's going to be noise in the kitchen. Pancake's going to notice it, or I'm going to see him orient toward it, which makes me think he notices it. And then I'm just going to reward him for staying where he is. So you heard some sound and I'm like, all right, nice one. Sorry, bad camera work on my part. And that's it. So he could have run out to see what's going on and bark and growl, but I tried to reinforce something I liked better there, which is just hang out. Another example, he's hanging out again by the fireplace. Husband approaches baby gate. He looks at me. At this point, he's getting pretty used to looking at me to see when the treat's coming. When I think it looks like my husband was letting one of our dogs in. You may remember from last week I mentioned that husband standing up and moving around is particularly difficult for Pancake. And this is often true. Actually, for dogs who are afraid of strangers too, like a stranger sitting down is less scary than a stranger standing up or moving around. So here I asked my husband to stand up. Pancake is over here in his pen so that there's, he's as far away in this room as he can be. And then when I see that he's noticed Barrett standing up, I just toss him a treat. And there he wasn't doing any particular pre-trained behavior. He was just standing and noticing. And that's fine. I don't mind reinforcing that at all. Now we're getting more advanced. So here Pancake is actually loose in the living room. And one thing that has scared him in the past, or at least preceded barking and growling, is my husband moving his legs or feet or standing up from the couch here? So I think here I asked him to move his feet. I'll see. Yeah. And then he noticed, and then I just reinforced or rewarded Pancake for just hanging out there. This is a really tough one, and this kind of came upon me by surprise. Pancake, all the dogs actually are up and about. Probably they were hoping for something from some human. So here Pancake is turned and sees husband walking into the room toward him. So this is a huge trigger for him. And I think I called him to try to get him to move. He didn't move all the way to me though. Nonetheless, he looks at me, looks back at husband. He's like, "Oh, am I okay?" Yep. So I'm still going to reward that. He didn't do an awesome sprinting to me recall, but that's okay. What he just did is perfectly fine with me. He noticed the husband, looked at me, wagged his tail, came, got a treat. The other dogs are wondering where their treats are. Here's another example. Pancake's right in the kind of bottom of the screen, sleeping on this dog bed. He's going to notice, he just noticed he raised his head slightly and he's not totally asleep. So I know he saw my husband walk in from the kitchen. I say, "Oh, you're a genius." And I toss him a treat. Oops. Okay. Does anyone have questions about those skills that I just talked about? You can see there is nothing fancy. We weren't doing training and training sessions or sets. These are just things I was paying attention to and reinforcing in the course of a regular day. Now, there are some tips I have for you if you're working on this at home to make it easier for yourself to get it right and have less stress involved. The first one is, we already talked about some last week, but choose where the dog is during the day so that you're more likely to have opportunities to reinforce stuff you like instead of reacting to things you don't like. So have them somewhere where they're less likely to be put into close proximity to the person they're scared of. It's much better, as we just looked at several examples of, it's much better to reward the dog while they're doing something you like before they make a choice to bark or growl rather than trying to respond afterwards. Now, having your reinforcement ready is a big deal. And because when you have a dog in this situation where the trigger's in the house with them, opportunities to reinforce something could happen almost any time, any part of the house. Keep some treats in your pocket. Have some little treat jars distributed throughout the house so that you aren't caught without a way to quickly reinforce the dog if they've done something that you like. And this last point is, again, don't be too picky about what your dog is doing. If they're not doing the behavior you hate, consider reinforcing, even if it's just looking quietly at the sort of trigger person. Okay, the last point I wanted to address is one I get a lot when I talk with clients about, okay, these are the behaviors we want to reinforce: moving away, quietly settling, etc. They said, "Well, I don't want my dog to just move away from my husband. I want him to like him." Which I get. Totally. But you will get there. You will get more pro-social behaviors over time when you're training with positive reinforcement, focusing on behaviors you like and not pushing too hard. And what is pushing too hard is probably a whole nother session that we could spend some time on looking at examples of times where we have pushed a little too hard. But remember, when you train with positive reinforcement, one of the wonderful things about it is that the trigger, the thing that your dog is worried about, is going to predict good things. Because when you're training around the trigger, you're giving your dog food or whatever, stuff they like. So they're going to start behaving differently around that trigger over time. even if you're not explicitly training pro-social behaviors, which I'm not sure I've rarely done, you'll still get them. So just a quick encouragement example from our lives. So here's Pancake this week, who is now jumping up on the sofa with my husband. So he's wagging his little tail. I am going to call him down from there, just to preempt any problems, but that was a really good sign. And then here's another new thing that's happened in the last week. This is him zonked out sleeping on the sofa next to my husband. So I haven't been actively reinforcing, friendly behavior, anything we would call friendly behavior. But we're getting it anyway. I've just been reinforcing ways to get out of trouble, to come to me for food, move away from that thing for food, or, hey, you notice that, stay settled, that's great, have some treats. All right, guys, any questions about training your dog at home who is struggling with a family member? Does anyone feel like you've been missing opportunities maybe to reinforce behaviors that you could do with more of? I know I used to make that mistake personally a lot. I would have in my mind, well, I'm working on look at me, or I'm working on whatever, recall. And if the dog didn't do the behavior, I would keep trying to get it rather than taking what I had, which was better than what I was trying to get rid of. And it just makes training much easier. You don't have to do, or I haven't really with Pancake done that much formal training in terms of recall or downstay or anything. I just reinforce what he's doing when he notices my husband, generally as long as it's not barking and growling. Anything that would be acceptable in our day-to-day lives. Matt says, I definitely need to put treat jars around our first floor. Yeah, it's that's definitely something that we have done a lot of, and it becomes a little trickier if you have more than one dog. For a while, I couldn't figure out where my little cheese jar kept going on one of our ledges until I realized that our larger dogs could get up and take it right off. But yeah, just having treats around, just make sure they're high enough up that you're wondering why your other dogs are getting fat. It's because they're eating all your treats. You just have them readily accessible. And especially if you're trying to recruit a family member to help you to occasionally toss treats, make them almost like a visual prompt for them, like really obvious bowl of treats, kitchen counter, right where, problems tend to happen, or right next to where they normally sit at night watching TV. Those can be good. They're prompts for us too. Us being the trainer who isn't the person the dog is afraid of. But it can be a good reminder just to make it super duper easy for your family member to maybe toss some treats as well. And don't forget to reinforce. So if your, husband, son, daughter, dad, whoever does toss treats, make sure that you reinforce them for that. Say, wow, oh, nice job. Thank you so much. You're really making a difference. And they will start to see differences, which will be more meaningfully reinforcing probably for them long term when they start to see the dog wagging their tail. And remember, the dog is only part of the equation. Their behavior is only part of the equation. Our behavior is a huge part of it as well. All right, guys. As you know, you can post questions under the recording and I will get to them. I hope this was helpful. And I hope it's encouraging to see Pancake's progress. Oh, I forgot to mention, but I did want to mention this. You don't kind of get there and then you're done, if that makes sense. So 2 nights ago, for instance, Pancake, for the first time, took treats from my husband's hand and was sleeping on the couch next to him. And I was like, oh, it's a miracle. But the next day barked at him again. But that's pretty normal. There's so many different contexts and levels of sort of challenge to a dog each day, and we can't always pick up on, well, why is he barking now, or why is this harder than the other thing yesterday? I don't know, but note where the problem was, and say, okay, maybe in this context I need to dial it back a bit for a few days and see if I can get rid of the barking here, or at least decrease it further. But don't feel like you're not making progress if, it feels like everybody's happy today, and then the next day you have more problem behavior. It's totally normal. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone who just, got to a point where dog loved husband or whatever, and then there was never another problem again. You're looking to decrease frequency of problem behavior, increase the stuff you like, but those are frequencies that rarely reach 100 and 0. So just to keep that in mind so you don't feel too discouraged when you've got some you have a good day and then you have a bad day. Yeah, family members really need positive reinforcement, especially because if they're being barked and growled at, they're being their behavior of being around the dog or approaching the dog may be being punished by the dog's behavior. So we're fighting against that. Using those gates, or if you can't use gates, tethers or whatever, doors, whatever you're going to use can help. Anything that decreases sort of the aversiveness to your family member is also important from their side, so that they're, you have an easier time engaging them and having them develop a positive association with the dog, the same way you're trying to help the dog learn that good stuff happens when that guy is around. So it's easy for us to forget, I know, because we feel like, well, the dog's just a dog and I have to help them be brave, but my husband should know better. He's got a big human brain and I should just tell him and it should work, but that's not how it works. We learn by consequences too. Okay, everybody. This was a little on the long side. I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to give a lot of examples just to show what we're doing during the day, over the course of the day. There are lots of opportunities to reinforce, both dog and human, in fact. And the more of those you can take advantage of, the faster progress you'll make. Okay, I will see everyone online. Happy Monday. Have a wonderful week.